By the time the furnace kicked on again, the digital clock on the stove read 12:17 a.m. The house on Sycamore Lane lay quiet under a thin October moon, the kind of quiet that makes a person hear the smallest sounds: baseboards settling, a branch ticking the siding, the refrigerator's long mechanical sigh. In the kitchen's half-light, Claire folded and refolded a hand towel until it looked like a linen rope. She'd washed the dinner dishes, set out her son's lunch, and even alphabetized the spice rack, all to delay doing the one thing she dreaded: lying down and waiting for sleep that never came. From the hall came a small cough. She listened. One cough, then silence. Good. Noah had finally cleared that stubborn cold. Upstairs, her husband, Michael, was a steady metronome of breathing. He could sleep on an airport floor. Claire envied him in the way only an insomniac can envy a sleeper. Her mind, however, was a carnival of lights she couldn't switch off. The letter from the hospital about her mother's biopsy. The email that politely announced her job was being restructured. The meeting tomorrow with the principal about Noah's classroom scuffle. And, beneath those, a quieter ache she didn't look it straight on: the way she and Michael had become two parallel rails no longer crossing, only running in the same direction. Dutiful and separate. On the table, a worn pocket Bible lay open to the 23rd Psalm. The verse she had underlined so hard it pressed an imprint on the page behind it: even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. For you are with me, she whispered, and felt foolish talking into an empty kitchen. But the words made a small warmth at the back of her throat, a coal that refused to go out. The parish priest had said something that morning after Mass when she'd cornered him by the baptismal font, too embarrassed to ask for an appointment. Father Raymond looked like every photograph of a kindly priest: round shoulders, bright eyes behind oval frames, but his hands were those of a man who still changed his own oil and stacked folding chairs. He had listened without interrupting, the way he always did. Then said this: Claire, the night is where faith learns to breathe. If sleep won't come, pray simply. 5 small prayers before bed. Don't negotiate with God. Don't perform. Just give Him the truth and let Him hold you. Let the prayers carry you, not the other way around. 5 prayers? She'd asked, half skeptical. 5, he'd said, spreading out thick fingers, as if counting them were a trick a child could master. Stay with each long enough to let the words find you. Now, in the soft blue of the stove clock, Claire uncoiled the towel and took the Bible in both hands, as if it weighed something. If the night would not end, she would, at least, not be alone in it. She drew a breath and spoke the first prayer Father had given her. Lord, stay with me. It sounded simple enough when she'd heard it. Trite, even. But the moment Claire said it aloud, her throat caught. Stay. As if God might do what others had done: step back when things became heavy or inconvenient. As if He might lock the door on the way out and leave her with all this buzzing in her skull. What Father had said floated back: it's the Emmaus prayer. Those disciples with their ruined hope, walking toward the wrong town at sundown. They didn't recognize Him until they begged, stay with us, for evening draws near. And He did. Claire closed her eyes. Stay with me, she said again, testing the shape of the words. She pictured a chair drawn up beside her bed, the kind of chair a nurse pulls near in the long hours, a hand on a wrist to count a pulse. She pictured the chair occupied. I'm afraid, she admitted to the air, to the night, to the God who is either listening or not. I'm afraid of money and sickness and of Noah growing up angry because I'm always tired. I'm afraid of being married and still lonely. I'm afraid the news is right and the world's just violence and meanness with ads in between. The coil of thoughts loosened by a thread. The kitchen light felt less hostile. She remembered. From childhood. The way her grandmother used to tuck a small prayer card of the Sacred Heart behind every family photo. As if to say, he is in our picture whether we notice it or not. Stay with me, she said for the third time. And this time the sentence felt less like throwing words at the ceiling and more like setting down a mittened hand into a larger one. The phone on the counter buzzed. A text from her sister. Mom's test moved to Friday morning. You okay? Claire typed, I will be. Then she set the phone face down, breathed until her shoulders dropped, and turned to the second prayer Father had taught her. 3. Prayer 2. Forgive me. If there's gravel in the bed, Father had said, you'll roll on it all night. Don't haul it into tomorrow. Ask forgiveness. Receive it. Claire grimaced. She could catalog the gravel without thinking. A sharp comment she'd shot at Noah when he spilled orange juice. A colder one she'd aimed at Michael when he asked how her day was, and she heard only a trap you don't really want to know. And in the school parking lot that afternoon, after the principal had described what happened in class, Noah shoving a boy who had tugged his hoodie-ish defended her son with clipped syllables and a mother bear bravado that felt, even then, like a costume. The principal had responded calmly, and Claire had driven home imagining herself as a valiant advocate. But now, at midnight, the costume sagged. The truth was simple. She'd been embarrassed and angry and had transferred some of that heat to a tired man with a nameplate on his desk. Forgive me, she said, surprising herself by how quickly the tears came. Not because she had never asked it before, but because the room made the words echo. She found a pen and a sticky note from the junk drawer. And, without quite knowing why, wrote down 3 sentences. I judged before I listened. I spoke to win, not to love. I made my fear someone else's fault. Lord, forgive me, she said again. And tried, for once, not to argue her casino footnotes about lack of sleep. No asterisks about the budget or the biopsy or the hundreds of invisible tiny martyrdoms of a weekday. She had learned long ago there is a kind of apology that is strategy and a kind that is surrender. Tonight she wanted the second kind. The thought came, stubborn as an instruction. Apologize to Michael about the way you weaponize silence. Apologize to Noah for snapping. Ask the principal for a second meeting this time to listen. She felt a flash of defensiveness. Then, unexpectedly, a kind of relief. The night became a corridor with 3 lights along the wall. She didn't have to see the far end to know where the next step went. Claire pressed the sticky note into the back cover of the Bible. Her stomach unclenched for the first time all day. The third prayer waited. If prayer 2 scrubs the wound, Father had told her. This one lets the surgeon in. He'd smiled, knowing she'd wince at the metaphor. It's what Christ prayed in the garden. He didn't pretend to like the cup. He named it and yielded. Claire stared at the ceiling. I surrender, she said, hating the first syllable. Not because she didn't believe in God, but because surrender was an admission she could not make the universe behave. Surrender what? She said to the empty room. And then she knew, not the vague fog of anxiety, but the concrete piece of her job title and the identity it carried. The biopsy and the terror of watching her mother. Once a woman who could lift a couch to vacuum, diminished by a diagnosis. Her certainty that if she just managed everything perfectly, nothing bad could happen. The story she told herself that marriage was a ledger to keep instead of a covenant to keep renewing. She breathed in and let the items pass, each one like a book pulled from her hands and shelved where she could not micromanage it. I surrender the outcome of the meeting with the principal, she said quietly. I surrender whether Noah gets labeled that kid. I surrender the results of Mom's test. I surrender my fear of being small and unimportant. Nothing dramatic happened. The room did not glow. The furnace clicked off, and the sudden silence made her recognize how loud it had been. But her chest felt as if a tight strap had been loosened. She remembered another thing Father had said: surrender is not abdication. It's the difference between rowing alone in a storm and rowing while someone holds the boat steady. For the first time since sundown, Claire felt drowsy. She took the Bible and started down the hall. At the threshold, she paused. A fourth prayer remained. Gratitude had always felt to Claire like one of those words embroidered on pillow, sham nice in theory, dusty in practice. But Father had insisted, with unusual intensity, that this prayer, said sincerely, could turn a heart on its hinges. Your mind scans for danger, he'd told her. It's how we're wired after a long history of saber-toothed tigers and bill collectors. Gratitude is retraining, not denial. Vision. In the dim-lit hallway, she leaned a shoulder against the wall. A teenage posture she hadn't assumed in decades, and searched for anything she could name that was not a problem to be solved. Thank you, she said. And it felt awkward. She tried again. Smaller. Thank you for the heated air blowing through the vents. For the green light glowing on the smoke detector. For the box of mac and cheese in the pantry Noah always asks for. For the way Michael still puts gas in my car without telling me. Her mouth quirked. She stepped into Noah's room. He slept face down. A starfish child. Breath rising and falling in the rhythm of a secret tide. A construction paper crucifix he'd made in religious ed hung crooked above his bed. The bottom read Jesus loves me in first grade block letters. And the E in Jesus was backwards. Thank you for that E, she whispered. Smiling, she bent to kiss the air near his hair. She did not want even gratitude to wake him. Back in the hall, she caught her reflection in the mirror and did not brace or critique. She simply looked at the soft lines at the corners of her eyes, at the small scar above her lip from a childhood fall on a driveway, at a woman who was more than a list of crises. She walked into the master bedroom and, without turning on the lamp, crawled into bed. Michael stirred and reached an arm toward her. Not waking. Both of them practiced in this choreography. She fitted herself into the curve of his side. The old spooning that had once been automatic and had lately been neglected in the name of speed. The fifth prayer surfaced. Unexpected and direct. Guard us, she breathed. Guard this house. And then, in a surprise to herself, guard this town. She pictured the map the mayor had shown at the last city council meeting. The one with dots marking the last 6 months' worth of petty thefts, overdoses, and 2 incidents of violence that had roiled their community. A gas station clerk pistol-whipped during a late-night robbery. And, just a week ago, A middle schooler shoved so hard against lockers that his head split and needed stitches. The school email had called it a serious altercation. The neighborhood Facebook group had called it a dozen other things, some unrepeatable. "Guard him," she said, meaning the wounded boy. Guard the boy who shoved him. Guard the principal who has to carry both in his heart. She thought, too, of a man whose face she could not conjure, only the way the news anchors had repeated his name for 2 nights after he was found dead behind the hardware store. The anchors spoke in careful tones about fentanyl and about a system struggling to respond. On the 3rd night, the story slid down the rundown and vanished. But the thought of someone dying alone among cardboard and asphalt had camped behind Claire's ribs. "Guard the ones who are made invisible," she added. And the sentence surprised her with its fierceness. She turned her face into the pillow and, as if someone had cut a string, the heaviness behind her eyes pulled her toward sleep. Tomorrow would carry what it carried. But the night had become a place she could inhabit without being devoured. Somewhere between the 4th and 5th prayer, Claire crossed a border and did not know it. The way a traveler on a night train sleeps through the sign that says welcome. Sleep took her. It was the kind of sleep that does not erase problems but right-sizes them. 7. Morning. Doing the next right thing. The next day felt like 2 days stitched together, the morning made of humdrum motions, and the afternoon charged like a wire. At breakfast, Claire set a plate of scrambled eggs in front of Noah and apologized. "I was sharp yesterday." "I'm sorry," he chewed, guarded, then said without looking up, "It's okay," in the careful tone kids use when they aren't sure whether they're allowed to forgive so easily. "It's not okay," Claire said gently. "But you're okay. And we're okay." She squeezed his shoulder and let it go at that. His spine loosened. The conversation brightened with second-grade chatter about a science experiment involving vinegar and baking soda. They practiced his apology. 2. "If you pushed him, don't explain it away," she told him. "Say you're sorry for the pushing. Then tell him you want to try again." He nodded. "Nervous." She nodded back. Just as nervous. Michael, briefcase in hand, came into the kitchen. "You were up late," he said, not accusatory. "I prayed," she said, testing the ease of telling him, realizing she had often saved conversations about God for safer women, the ones with whom you can say words like surrender and not feel as if you're auditioning for a Hallmark movie. "I needed help." He set the briefcase down and put both palms on the table, a posture that looked like a man bracing against a gust of wind. "Me too," he said. He cleared his throat. "I miss us. I don't know how to fix it." The old ledger Claire carried, the one that kept silent tally of who had been more exhausted, more generous, more injured-fluttered, and then lay still. "I'm sorry for the way I freeze you out," she said. "I don't want to keep score. I want us." Michael's face did something complicated, relief and embarrassment and gratitude collapsing into one another. "I'll be home by 5, he said. "Let's make pasta and let the kid watch a movie so we can actually talk like we used to." He smiled. "I'll get the gas on the way." After drop-off, Claire called the school and asked to meet the principal briefly before lunch. She rehearsed a dozen speeches in the parking lot, then left them in the car like an umbrella on a sunny day. The principal, Mr. Renner, ushered her into a small office lined with college pennants and a plant that deserved a medal for surviving 1,000 neglected waterings. He looked tired and not unkind. "Mrs. Kavanaugh," He began. I'm glad you came. I am sorry about my tone yesterday, Claire said, before he could say anything else. I was embarrassed. I made that your problem. I'd like to listen today. Something in his shoulders dropped. He nodded. Thank you, he said. Then he told her what had happened to boys jostling after recess. An insult about a sweatshirt. Noah turning fast. A shove harder than he'd intended. Real blood and real tears. It's not big news in the cosmic scheme, Renner said. But it's not nothing either. I want your son to learn to turn aside before the shove. I want the other boy to learn to string words that at least aim at kindness. May I sit with the other boys, Mom? Claire asked, surprising herself. I'd like the boys to see us both choosing the same thing, no spin. No villain. Mr. Renner considered her as if weighing more than logistics. I think, he said slowly, that would help. They arranged a time after school. The mother, it turned out, was named Alicia, and she wore the weary armor of a nurse who'd just left a night shift. In the conference room, with the guidance counselor present, both boys sat stiffly, their hands the size of birds on the table. Noah, coached, apologized first, and then Alicia's son, Devin, mumbled an apology that held, in its syllables, humiliation and a strange attempt at hospitality, as if he wanted to open a door and did not know how. Claire looked at Alicia and saw in her face the same perilous mix she carried, rage at a world that made boys into enemies. Fear that your own child would become the story other parents told in a lowered voice. Grief at how early in life the word violence enters a vocabulary. What do you want for your son? Claire asked, carefully. That he be safe. Alicia said simply. And that he be good. I know those are not the same thing. I want both. Me too, Claire said. She reached across the table and, feeling brave or foolish, she couldn't tell which, squeezed Alicia's forearm just once. The two boys watched this small gesture like men studying an unfamiliar ritual. It was small and not nothing. Afterward, driving home, Claire felt the particular fatigue that follows courage. She stopped at St. Martha's even though she had not planned to, and slipped into the back pew for 10 minutes. The sanctuary smelled like old wood and lemon oil. The red sanctuary lamp burned its unassuming claim, someone is here. A man sat alone 2 rows ahead. He was dressed in thrift store layers and had the faraway gaze of someone whose address was uncertain. Claire reached into her purse for the envelope she kept for such encounters, cash, and a printed card with a list of resources from the Parish Conference of St. Vincent de Paul. She hesitated. Charity, she knew, is a word that can humiliate if handed like a ticket. So she put the envelope back and, instead, knelt and prayed the 5 prayers she had learned. The last one widened until it contained more faces than she knew how to carry. Guard him. Guard us. Guard this town. That afternoon, the call came. Claire's sister, Eva, spoke without preamble. It's malignant, she said. And then, mercifully, slow growing. Early. The doctor believes they got it all with the biopsy. But they want to do a lumpectomy and maybe radiation. Mom asked me to call because she's well. She's Mom. Making soup. Claire sat at the kitchen table, a part of her noticing the ridiculous normalcy of the bowl of apples in front of her. The 3 sippy cup lids nested like a child's game in the drying rack. Okay, she said. The way you say it when what you mean is not okay. When is the surgery? In 2 weeks. I'll send the details. Eva paused. You okay? I prayed last night, Claire said. Because it was true and because it felt somehow connected to this moment. I think I can keep breathing. They spoke logistics. Who would drive their mother to pre-op? Who would stay the first night? Which one of the grandkids should be shielded from details, and which ones might be relieved to have something concrete to name? After she hung up, Claire set her forehead on the cool tabletop and wept. The kind of crying that does not bargain or perform. Then she wiped her face, stood up, and did the next right thing. She took a rotisserie chicken from its plastic sarcophagus and put the pasta water on. When tears came again, she let them. She seasoned the sauce. Faithfulness, she found, tasted like garlic and steam. That evening, Michael chopped parsley while Noah scrolled the catalog for a family movie. They ate at the table. And when Noah triumphed small over a multiplication fact, they cheered as if medals were being awarded. After dishes, Michael and Claire told their son the bare truth about Nan and the kind a child can hold without dropping. He would not sleep as easily. And she hated that. But she would not let fear write a lie in his mind where a sharp, simple truth belonged. When Noah was in bed, Michael poured 2 glasses of the cheap red they liked. They sat on the back steps with the porch light off and the town's glow smelling like distant rain. You were brave today, he said. So were you, she replied. You said the quiet part out loud. They held hands. Not the way lovers sometimes do interlaced. Possessive but the way the faithful do, parallel palms. Fingers gently curled. A sacrament of agreement. In the days that followed, the prayers settled into the collarbone of Claire's evenings. She didn't always say all 5. Some nights one would expand, like a sponge dropped in water, and fill the space. Other nights they passed each like baton short and sure until sleep overtook her mid-sentence. Mouth open, unglamorous and holy. The school called twice with updates. Noah and Devin had been placed together during a restorative circle with a counselor who knew how to make second graders talk about harm without talking like lawyers. There was a plan, scripts for heated moments, breaks before shoves. A hand signal any adult could recognize. It was not foolproof, because nothing involving children or adults is foolproof. But it was a plan. Claire and Alicia exchanged numbers. When one of them had a hard day, she texted a prayer emoji neither of them especially liked. And it sufficed as a placeholder for something the phone could not carry. On a rain-polished Tuesday, the city council considered a proposal for additional lighting in the park and extended hours for the drop-in center on Cedar Street that offered warm coffee and help filling out forms that make the difference between a bed and a bench. The microphones crackled with citizens who wanted safety and citizens who wanted mercy and citizens who wanted both and were suspicious of the rhetoric of the other camp. Claire stood in the back, listening, remembering the 5th prayer and how, in her mouth, it had grown too large to keep contained in a bedroom. An older man with a clean windbreaker and an impatient stare spoke into the mic. We can't just pray about it, he said. We have to act. Claire found herself both agreeing and wanting to stand up and say, softly and unfashionably, prayer is not the opposite of action. It is its oxygen. But she did not say it. She texted Father Raymond. Asked whether the parish might host a night hour of adoration each week specifically for the town's wounds, and whether volunteers could accompany it with a sign-up to staff the drop-in center's new hours. He responded in 3 words, yes and yes. The night of her mother's surgery. The waiting room had the stale coffee scent of waiting rooms everywhere. Claire sat between Eva and a cousin who prayed in Spanish. She took out the pocket Bible and read the Emmaus story again. And a sentence she had read 100 times lifted itself like a tile loose from grout. He made as if to go on. He would have walked by. She realized. If they had not asked. Stay with us, she whispered. And the fluorescent lights hummed their answer. The surgeon walked in with the face professionals wear when the news is not catastrophic. The words came in an orderly line, clean margins. Outpatient radiation. Prognosis excellent. Claire exhaled a noise that embarrassed her and did not matter. Her mother, later, came out of anesthesia annoyed that she had not been allowed to bring lipstick into pre-op. A lady has standards, she scolded. And the nurse laughed. She does. That night, back home, Claire laid a hand on the crucifix over Noah's bed and felt its coolness. In her own. She knelt on the worn patch of rug on her side and prayed the 5 prayers until they were no longer 5. But a single movement of trust. 10. What it means to be kept. Months later, when spring finally bullied winter out of the corners of the yard, Claire would look back and realize that the night had not been a phase to endure, but a place in which something essential had taken root. The prayers had not made life neat. Money still required math. Noah still had days when his fists moved faster than his brain. Michael still had deadlines that stole his best hours and left him with leftovers. The town still argued about what to do with people who slept in doorways when the shelters were full and made the nice shop owners nervous. But the prayers had done their underground work. They had turned Claire from a woman who tried to manage all the variables into a woman who could call God into a room as easily as she could call a child in for supper. They had made apology less terrifying and gratitude less twee. They had made surrender a verb that did not mean quitting. They had made Garda sound less like superstition and more like a brave acknowledgement of danger and a braver claim that love is stronger. One evening after dinner, walking with Noah past the park, they watched Devin and his mother on a bench sharing a bag of chips. The boys waved. Awkward. And then, with the elastic grace of children, began to talk about a soccer video game as if nothing heavy had ever existed between them. Alicia grinned at Claire. We're learning, she said. We are. Claire agreed. It was not a triumphal sentence. It was a faithful one. When they reached the church, the side door to the chapel stood open. The sanctuary lamp burned steady. Inside, 2 people knelt, an elderly couple, and a man in layers whose name Claire did not know. She lit a candle. Noah tugged her sleeve. For Nana? He asked. For Nana, she said. And for our town. He watched the flame. For the boy who got stitches, he said, unprompted. And for the boy who did the shove. Yes, Claire said, and felt the old tightness in her chest replaced by a roomier ache, the sort that love uses to expand the walls of a heart. She realized she wanted, at last, to ask the thing she had not asked in months. Lord, stay with us. She said it aloud. The words did not echo this time, because they did not need to. That night, in bed, she prayed the 5 prayers not as spells, but as the grammar of a language she had begun to speak without translating. Stay with me. Forgive me. I surrender. Thank you. Guard us. Michael's hand found hers in the dark. The house settled. Somewhere, A train offered its distant animal note, announcing a passage. A border crossed while sleepers slept. Sleep came. It had no trumpets. It came like a gate being opened without squeak or ceremony. The night, which once was an adversary, became a neighbor. And God, who had seemed far, proved us the old story insists closer than breath.